Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for coming to the Common Boston and UNDA Forum, discussion about the future of the Innovation District. It's a pleasure to have you, and I'm just going to give some quick thank yous, and then I'll turn it over to David Silverman, who is the founder and director of Urban Neighborhood Design Alliance, otherwise known as UNDA, our partner organization in putting together this forum. And he'll introduce the speakers. We'll get into it. So, thank you again for coming out. I am the co-chair of Common Boston, which is a volunteer organization with the mission of bringing together designers and the general public towards dialogue for a more sustainable, more equitable, and more creative urban environment. We put on a whole series of free public events to this end throughout a couple of weeks. It's been going on a week now. We've got another week to go, and we hope you'll join us for open buildings, neighborhood tours. We have a design build challenge going on. It kicks off tonight, actually, and finishes on Sunday. You can vote on the creations online. All of this is on www.commonboston.org. And Common Boston is a volunteer program at the Boston Society of Architects. We want to thank, of course, the Boston Society of Architects and the BSA Lecture series, of which this is a part. And they're actually recording everything that's going on, so we'll have this transcribed, and I'm sure we'll be able to get videos of it somewhere online, maybe even for sale. We want to thank Shepley Bullfinch, who's hosting us tonight, and I also want to thank the event sponsors: Mass College of Art and Design, the Fenway Alliance, the Boston Foundation for Architecture, Service Point, and Bear Flag Wine, and of course Harpoon, which donated all the beer that we have tonight, and Sleeper Street Cafe, which donated a lot of the food. So thank you again for coming, and I'm going to turn it over to David Silverman, who will introduce our first speaker.
So as many months ago, Justin and I started talking about this event, and I'm really thrilled to see so many people here. It does take a long time to put these things together, and hats off to Justin and Mary and the rest of the Common Boston crew for all of their great work this week and for putting together these really, really important events to get us all more familiar with our neighborhoods. The Urban Neighborhood Design Alliance is, so I'm an architect. I have a practice in this neighborhood, and I love it here and love all the things that are happening right now. And it's really, really interesting and fun to see the area start to, really, really blossom, and really exciting to be here. And what we were hoping to accomplish, you'll hear a lot more of that from our panelists tonight. It's going to be really terrific. My nonprofit, the Urban Neighborhood Design Alliance, is really about community advocacy and bringing community together to talk about neighborhoods and to celebrate neighborhoods. We also have programs for youth, where we introduce them to design professionals and building professionals. And there's some, cards on the back you can learn more about us. I'm not going to take up too much time talking about that, but we're just really thrilled to turn out in this exciting time in Boston. The first speaker that we're going to have come out is Nigel Jacob. Nigel has one of the coolest jobs in City Hall, I think. He is actually he serves as the co-chair of the Mayor's Office of New Urban Mechanics, and it's a new group within City Hall focused on delivering transformative services to Boston residents. He's going to tell you more about that. Nigel also serves as the mayor's advisor on emerging technologies. And in both of these roles, Nigel works to develop new models of innovation for cities for the 21st century. And some of the stuff he's doing, I would actually say, it's for the 22nd century. So it's good stuff. And he's going to tell you a little bit more about, I think, the Innovation District and what it's envisioned to be from the mayor's point of view and from those good folks at City Hall. So, Nigel.
I'd like to start by apologizing for two things. One, I'm a little bit sleep deprived. I have a 3-week-old. And so I don't know what I'm saying. So I haven't slept in that time. And the second apology is I'm not Mayor Menino. So just as provisos. I think actually it's, let me see what I've got here. Does this work? It does work. I can project.
I don't think, can people in the back really hear?
Not really.
Not really.
Yeah, a little soft.
Move it to the center.
Sure, I can do that.
Or we pull the ones from the table.
Oh, that could move too.
Are these live?
They're taped down.
We're architects.
Can
We
you-
can rip those up.
Can we rip those? I can sit, I mean,
Move up close. Move up close.
up to this?
Okay, I'll rip them up.
Are you sure?
Just stand in the middle.
I could do that.
Because people really
Okay. Is that's nice.
Excuse me. That's just the recording onto the camera.
Sorry.
So there are no.
Okay,
Okay.
there is a resource.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can, well, I'll change up my format. I can be flexible here. Better?
Yes. Just better. Close.
So I'm gonna walk around like this, like that. So I think it is worth explaining a little bit, just very briefly, about who I am and why I should be here at all. When Mayor Menino won his recent 5th term as mayor of Boston, he did 2 very important things as regards to civic innovation from my perspective. One, this whole notion of the innovation district. He began talking about it, began promoting it. And the second was he created an office for me, the mayor's office of new urban mechanics. We are essentially, not essentially, we are the mayor's innovation team. We've been around for about a year and a half, just about, and our charge is to, as David said, to deliver transformative services to the residents of Boston. That covers a lot of ground, but it's everything from mobile apps to design stuff and so on. So I do have an affinity for this stuff, but I am not a designer. I'm an architect, as well as not being a mayor. So when we think of, or just to finish the thought, Mayor Menino is, in terms of where the name is, but that often comes up. Mayor Menino is the original urban mechanic, and when we were looking at sort of models of innovation that worked for us, his focus on consumer services was a natural inspiration for us. So the idea was, let's radically enhance by calling it new, right? So the new urban mechanics, right? So that's us. So let me see if I can dive in here. So with that being said, when we think about the history of the innovation district, it comes out of a former railroad yard in shipping port, and as such, it's always been a place of production, trade, and economic strength. That's no different today. The big difference today is that now we're trying to focus or explore the creation and commercialization of ideas as it pertains to the innovation district. I think I have some shots here. If you've ever seen these before, these are kind of interesting. That's what it used to look like. The vision for the neighborhood that is the innovation district was a place that Boston's creatives, entrepreneurs, artists, and so on could live, work, connect, and play. And that's sort of what the graphic here. This is the logo for the innovation district. Connect doesn't actually show up on there, but I think of like the intersection of those circles as sort of that connect notion. So here's a couple of maps. I'm not sure what you've seen today as part of your tour, but there are a couple of maps here of the innovation district. So again, the idea here is not to create a whole new innovation cluster like you'll see in other places, but rather to find a way to nucleate or to promote a new node in the local innovation ecosystem. So when we think of Kendall Square and Longwood Medical and the Route 2028 here, obviously have extensive histories as it relates to innovation of all sorts. The idea here is to create a new node in that network. Here's another map of the area in case you didn't know where you are. That's us over here on the right with Kendall Square and Longwood Medical on the left. The vision I mean, the vision was presented by the mayor in, as I said, when he won his most recent term to mayor. And since that time, so how many months is that? So 18 months, something like that? We've seen 50 new companies and something like 2,000 new jobs created. So we've seen progress in developing the idea and getting people to really understand what this means. Here's some factoids here about some of the development that we've seen as far as the new jobs and so on, and some facts there as well as when we talk about what the benefits are from the perspective of access. That's towards the bottom. It's gotten a lot of interest, so this is sort of chronological going this way. So we've seen a gradual discussion starting from local sources and now it's kind of gone national. Somewhere around, where is it? So the Boston Business Journal, we began seeing the air quote, or the quotes taken off Innovation District, and it just became Innovation District. So I think it is slowly seeping into the consciousness of the folks that are talking with this kind of this sort of thing as a model that's worth exploring and sort of diving into. There's been a lot of activity, as I said, in terms of new companies either starting here or moving here. There's a whole range of them here. I'm not going to, mention too many of these, but there they are. Again, sort of a more of a compiled list of companies and different organizations that are doing anything here. There's also, because one of the intentions around the Innovation District was always to promote collaboration across innovators. We've seen the rise of a number of different co-working, collaboratory type or collaboration-based spaces popping up in the area by a variety of different organizations as well. So let me back up from there. One thing I would say about sort of the foundation for the Innovation District, part of the reason that for the success is a strong foundation that already existed here prior to the Innovation District for sort of it being called the Innovation District. Long has the Innovation District region, or the South Boston waterfront, been the home to one of Boston's best artist communities. That definitely forms a context out of which this broader discussion of innovation can happen. There are also a lot of anchor institutions here. There are the Convention Center, the Institute for Contemporary Art, Gillette, or the Marine Industrial Park. So there's a whole range of different organizations that and institutions that help to sort of create this backdrop for talking about innovation. So what do you think? One of the things I want to, I'm not going to talk for much longer here, but one of the things I wanted to mention or talk a little bit about or say something somewhat provocative, we'll see what you think, is something I find interesting around the language of the Innovation District, which is that it is an urban lab. I think that this makes sense intuitively when you think of all the cultural, social, and business innovation that's happening in the area. But when we think of what we're trying to do here, if all we ended up doing was to cite new companies in the Innovation District, I think we would be missing the real opportunity here. So it seems to me that we want the Innovation District to be as creative about how we think about things like public space as the companies and organizations and residents who already call this place home, for example. Creativity with a public space, though, as we all know, can often be very tough. Most of the effort in the urban lab language or sort of concept that we've seen talked about in the last year or so by the likes of IBM and smart cities and those kinds of things, kind of focus on massive overhauls to either government or technology of one kind or another, infrastructure elements, and not so much streetscape changes or other sort of street level issues that would more directly impact people's lives or the residents' lives. So issues like new sidewalk design, new lighting ideas, new ways of providing Wi-Fi and other kinds of connectivity are often very hard to test quickly. So in the spirit of this place being an urban lab, what if we could create block or a set of blocks where this kind of experimentation could occur. So this is a provocative. What if, too, the experiments were not run on residents, but rather with and by them? Right? So this is trying to evolve the idea of a laboratory where people experiment on you to where you're actually exploring things together. This would be a new type of program we have. I've been calling it a community collaboratory, very clever, where the experimentation would be designed and approved by the residents, and rapid iteration of the public space would be supported by the city. Yes. So perhaps in this way we could begin to change the language and the way we frame discussions about the future. If we can weave into discussions of the future of this neighborhood an element of experimentalism and not just randomly trying things, but really have a theory as to what we're testing and actually work together to roll those things out. I think that we could really begin to develop a community-driven vision of what this neighborhood could be. That's it. Thanks very much.
Can you hear me? So I'm going to introduce our moderator for the panel discussion and get that underway. David Assine, for architects here. Everybody here knows who David is. David is, of course, the principal of Assine Associates. He's also a principal at Sasaki Associates. And he's an active member and a fellow of the American Institute of Architects. David, we're really happy to have him here tonight because he actually is doing a lot of work now and starting to get very involved in the Innovation District and is taking an active role in the community and is, he's got design experience doing the FP3 project, but he also has been a consultant on the Seaport Square project, and then he's also going to be designing the new Innovation Center. And so it's very exciting, and for those of us in the neighborhood, we're looking forward to an Innovation Center. So, David also was recently inducted into the New England Design Hall of Fame, and he also has served as a co-chair of DIGMA. That's the Design Industry Group in Massachusetts. David has served as an educator for architecture schools across the country, and a critic at these schools across the country, and is also a member of the Boston Civic Design Commission. So I'd like to ask David and the panelists to come forward now. Get comfortable.
By the way, folks, there are some seats up here in case there's folks back there who can't hear. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to stand here, but I think I'm going to sit at the table. It's really wonderful to be here tonight. I just want to acknowledge the great work that Common Boston does. I've had the pleasure of knowing the Common Boston organization for a few years, and it's really wonderful to see how it's really evolving over time. Oh, I'm sorry. Is this? Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. Great. So I was just saying that I really want to acknowledge Common Boston for the work that they do and for helping bring all of us together. And in particular, Justin, who has been and David, who've been so helpful in organizing tonight's event. It's a great pleasure to introduce our exceptional panel this evening. And forgive me, but there's so much to say about some of these folks that I will want to read some of their bios for you. I can start at the end, at the far right, with Jason Hanna, who's the CEO and co-founder of Greentown Labs, which I think was one of the logos that we just saw on Nigel's map. Jason is the managing director and co-founder of Greentown Labs, an incubator space for early-stage clean technology companies. Jason and his co-founders recently formed Greentown Labs in an effort to help provide the next generation of innovators the resources they need to launch their clean technology businesses. They recently opened the doors to their new 14,000 square foot facility in the Innovation District and are providing a workspace where entrepreneurs can collaborate and gain access shared resources such as machining tools, laboratory equipment, and shop space for building prototypes. Greentown Labs currently houses 10 early-stage member companies with nearly 40 full-time employees working from its Innovation District facility. And in addition, Jason is also the president and founder of Coincident, a startup company developing a new type of residential and commercial energy management system. Coincident recently received a federal grant from the Department of Energy to aid in commercialization of their technology and is readying prototypes for in-home testing in Massachusetts and Texas beginning this fall. And Jason has already told me that we can ask him all the tough, geeky questions. So keep that in mind when we get to that part of the program. To Jason's left is John Werner. John is the managing director of Citizen Schools. Many of you may have heard of Citizen Schools. John is the founding member and current managing director and chief mobilizing officer of the Citizen Schools and is a member of the organization's operating team. John has helped transform Citizen Schools from a concept paper in 1995 into a thriving national education program. Today, in 2011, they have 500 employees, 5,000 students, 3,200 volunteers, a budget of $25 million, and programs in 7 states and 20 cities, which is incredibly impressive. Over 16 years, John has redesigned and redefined classroom learning, developed a pipeline for the next generation leaders, created opportunities for all adults to take part in the education of youth in their community, and helped youths create paths towards high school graduation, college, and career success. A few more things about John. He was in residence at Harvard 2008-2009 as a Loeb Fellow based out of the Graduate School of Design, awarded to post-professionals for independent study with access to all the schools at Harvard and MIT. And for those of you who don't know, the Loeb program is an amazing program that really brings remarkable people together like John. He's a graduate of Hamilton College, president of his class, and captain of the cross-country team. So we've got all the details. We're really excited to have John here. Next to John is someone who may be very familiar to many of you in the room, is Cliff Stoltz. And Cliff is the founder and creative director of Stoltz Design, which is a leading design agency in Boston's Fort Point neighborhood, and that's why I say many of you may know him. Cliff has nurtured a highly collaborative studio environment that emphasizes a process based on research, sound strategy, and thorough exploration. For 25 years, he's been creating compelling communications for a diverse group of clients, and I can testify to some of those clients. Cliff and I have had the pleasure of working together on the redesign of Architecture Boston, which is sitting right over there, which is an amazing magazine, and also developed a lot of the materials for DIGMA, the organization, the Design Industry Groups of Massachusetts, which David was talking about a little bit earlier. In addition, other clients such as Fidelity Investments and Cakewalk Music Software and Machine Age, also a local. In this neighborhood. Cliff's work has been featured in all the major design publications for graphic arts, including Communication Arts, Prints, How Magazine. He's won numerous awards, exhibited internationally, and has work that's in the permanent collection of the Cooper Hewitt, which is the National Design Museum. Cliff also is an educator at Rhode Island School of Design and Mass Art, and lectures at other schools and design organizations around the country. So we're thrilled to have Cliff here as well. And finally, to my right, a woman who needs no introduction, our very own Barbara Lynch. Barbara and I had the very wonderful opportunity of working together on FP3, which really was so catalytic and really brought our project to life. Many of you know this, but Barbara is the chef and founder of the Barbara Lynch Gruppo, James Beard Award winner. She is regarded as not only one of Boston's leading chefs, but one of the country's leading chefs and restaurateurs. She grew up right close by here in South Boston, where at age 13 she got her first kitchen job cooking at a local rectory. Today, Barbara is the chef owner of a restaurant group that is comprised of 8 entities located in Boston. Not just the 3 restaurants in FP3, Sportello and drink, and, well, drink is not really a bar, Sportello drink, and the incredible Montagne. If you haven't been, make it your business to plan a special occasion to be there. But also Number 9 Park, B&G Oysters, the Butcher Shop, and Stir, a little closer to my home in the South End. Barbara's talents have continued to garner numerous accolades over the years, both locally and nationally. And she was named Best New Chef in 1996 by Food and Wine, and in 2003 was named the Best Chef in the Northeast. Barbara and her recipes have been featured in many, many places, including Food and Wine, Saveur, Bon Appetit, the New York Times. And if you haven't seen it, in the fall of 2009, Barbara's first cookbook, Stir, Mixing It Up in the Italian Tradition, was published. And it doesn't come out quite as well in our house, but it's an amazing cookbook, which I recommend. So we have, as you can see, a really remarkable panel. Tonight, I'm going to ask our panel a few questions. It's a very diverse panel, and so we're hoping to get very diverse responses. And then after about a half hour, we are going to open it up to questions from the audience, so please be thinking about what questions you might have. So, I'm going to sit down now.
Yeah.
To get started, folks, you heard a little bit about Nigel's presentation of the Innovation District, and all of you have a connection to this part of town. And I thought it would be interesting just to have run the table and tell us a little bit about what brought you here in the first place. Before there was an innovation district, a so-called innovation district, many of you were already working and interested in this neighborhood. What brought you here? Jason?
Sure, I'd be happy to take that. Hi, thank you so much for having me here. It's really an honor to be, kind of in the presence of all of you guys who are quite successful, and I feel like, I'm at the beginning of a journey, and you all have had great success, so I hope to follow in your footsteps. What brought me here? I moved from the Midwest. I moved out here in 1998. I started in the suburbs, worked for a large corporation. I moved into this area. I lived on D Street back in 2000 and 2001. And I really loved the area. I loved the character. It was very different than it is today, but it was a fantastic place. And throughout the years, I'd always dreamed of starting my own business. Back in 2007, I started Coincident, which is this idea I had about a residential and commercial energy management system. In 2009, we got some money from the Department of Energy. The company started to accelerate, and we opened an office in Cambridge back in 2010. We were very happy. We loved the place there. We co-located with a gentleman named Sam White, who has a solar milk chilling company. And we subleased a very old warehouse space, and it worked great. We have folks from MIT who are on my team. Sam has a lot of folks from MIT. He was, if you're familiar with their 100K project, he was a runner-up in one of their competitions. And suddenly, within a couple months, we ended up with 3 other clean tech startups who were working out of this space. And it was a fantastic collaboration. And what happened at that point, we knew it was a short-term space. And, after a few months, it was clear we needed to find a new place to settle. And we loved that proximity. We loved to be near MIT. We loved the proximity to transportation and smart entrepreneurs. And we started looking. And I had familiarity with this neighborhood. And as we looked around, we found a fantastic place on Summer Street. So we settled here. We opened the doors in May. And we've been open for about 7 weeks now. We just had a grand opening 2 days ago. And it's a really exciting time for us. We've taken about 14,000 square feet in this great old Fort Point building. And it's wonderful. 10 companies, 40 employees. It's going really well.
Well, that's great. Welcome. That's great that you just opened so recently. Welcome to the neighborhood. John.
Thanks. So in 1998, I gained a lot of weight, and I decided to do this 10-mile swim in Boston Harbor. And it started at the Boston Light Swim and came right in. And I just fell in love with the Boston Islands. I think our federal park here is one of the least used or known federal parks in the country. It's fitting you guys are on a boat ride before. And I think it's our Grand Canyon. I just fell in love with it. For 10 years, no one wanted to organize that race, so I organized it. So for 10 years, I got to know the harbor really well. As was introduced, I'm one of the founders of Citizen Schools, and originally we were in the basement of the Zigomots restaurant. It flooded 3 times, biblical proportion, servers under foot of water. And we were shopping around for a new place to locate. And in 2000, there was a boat right in the 4-Point Channel. I don't know if people remember that. That's where we were going to be, but some of my staff with post-traumatic stress from the water said we can't go there. And we landed a bay on the 5th floor of the Children's Museum. And we took another bay and another bay over the years, and then we took another floor. And now I have about 200 employees at the Children's Museum, and we love it. We have a shower there, so a lot of my colleagues run and bike to work, and we're active in the community. I don't think we fully take advantage of the area. And then the other thing I'll add is Citizen Schools recruits volunteers. Many architects from Shepley Bulfinch have taught these 10-week apprenticeships. And one of the things we did on a big scale was the federal courthouse was built. And when it was built, they said a lot of the kids from the neighborhoods of Boston come into this building because they're court involved. They're not coming in because they are learning the positive aspects of the judicial system. And they outsource to us to help organize with Discovering Justice these mock trials. So twice a year, we change the ecosystem there. We have about 2,000 people that come in May and December, and there are 15 mock trials with federal judges hearing them. And these middle schoolers, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders from Boston, try these cases. And we've had Justice Breyer come up from Washington and be a jury member of a case that he's handling. And the kids feel like heroes. Grandmas go out and buy briefcases for the kids afterwards because they want their kids to be lawyers. I don't know if that's a good thing. But I'd love to do more things like that with some of the other entrepreneurs and technology folks that are coming into this region. And we're really proud to be here. And we get a lot of parking tickets and we spend a lot of money on food, but we can do more.
And thank you for having me here too, Cliff Stoltz. So I think I first became aware of the 4-Point Channel neighborhood going to the nightclub called The Channel, crossing over the Summer Street Bridge and taking a right onto Melcher and then onto Necco Place. And that was really my first exposure to what was a pretty neat neighborhood. I moved down here when I was laid off, and I decided to start my own design business. And I thought, well, there's got to be some good loft spaces over there. Found a spot on 49 Melcher Street on the 4th floor, which I ended up starting with a 500 square foot space that I had to walk through a furniture refinishing and lacquering space to get to. And I ended up eventually taking over the lease of the whole floor and being able to expand when we needed to. So I ended up staying there for about 20 years. The other thing, though, that drew me to the place, which is probably more important than the channel, was that it was a thriving artist community. I realized that early on when I moved down here, and by art I mean all kinds of art. There was, there were commercial artists, the graphic designers, they actually called it commercial art at one time, graphic artists, photographers, printers, typesetters. There were actually businesses for typesetting back then. But there were also a lot of fine artists, and actually when I had the lease on the floor, there were a lot of my subtenants on that floor and in the building at 49 Melcher Street were artists. So I think that's really kind of the thing that has, after being in this building for 20 years, I eventually was asked to move out. I really couldn't see moving anywhere else. This neighborhood had become so much a part of the personality of the studio and the community. So we found we're lucky enough to find another place, which we're very happy with, right over on Channel Center. You got your
Great. Wow. Hi. Why I moved here?
Well, why you decided to open
Down here?
Down
Oh,
here.
gosh. Born and raised here. I used to work down on the docks, actually, believe it or not, when I was right in high school, and I worked at a company called Port Terminals, where the design center is now, and it was the last building down on the water, which is no longer there, but it was a warehouse that would receive products from ships. And then there was an import-export business. that I was very familiar with. So I did that for like 6 or 7 years, and I had multiple jobs, born and raised in South Boston, a family. My mother was a single mother. My father died a month before I was born. I was the last Lynch. So many, many memories about this area. She would actually walk me out of the old Harbor Projects where I grew up, and we would walk straight down Dot Ave to A Street, and directly I would look at this building that was actually Boston Costume before Boston Costume moved to Nealon Street. And I said, you know, as a kid, you see like Big Bird and all of that. Wow, look at that. Then we'd take a left to go to Filene's, and she would do like go to get her watch fixed and blah, blah, blah. But that was always an experience. Get on the train, red line on the way back, have a blueberry muffin from Jordan Marsh. Fast forward to, I would say maybe 28 years ago, when I knew I wanted to be a chef, and I was really young and naive and 20, 21. I actually looked at Lucky's as a building that would be like wonderful restaurant, and thank God I didn't do it then, or couldn't afford to actually, and saw this area, not the artist community, because I know the community here and I knew it, and I knew back then. I went to many parties and part of all of that, but the thing that I loved about this area is what it is, the soul of it. You know, being on the docks, working the warehouses, the buildings, the brick, the tunnels. I know every street down here. So for me to come here, to come back and put these 3 restaurants here is sort of like in a way, like a little bit of a homecoming. I'm absolutely probably done with I don't need another restaurant, but I love the building that I'm in, and I love my community, and I always have loved this neighborhood, so it's pretty much my story.
Well, that's, I think this is, I wanted us to do this because it's such a testimony to the brilliance of Justin and David of putting this panel together, because as you can see, the perspectives on this neighborhood range from you know, coming here as a little girl to having your company open just a few weeks ago. And I think that range and perspective is really fascinating in terms of thinking about the future of this place, and you know, what is the context. The Innovation Center, you know, people are asking me all the time, so what is the Innovation Center? You've heard Nigel talk a little bit about the mayor's vision for the Innovation District, Innovation District, and they asked me about the Innovation Center too. And I thought it would be really interesting to sort of take Nigel's comment about the mayor's vision of this area as an urban lab, and ask our panelists what the Innovation District, what does that mean to them from their perspective, either as a restaurateur or someone involved in education, an artist, technology company. These are some very different perspectives, and experimentation and laboratory mean very different things to all of you. So who'd like to sort of grab that one?
The geeky?
I'll take a stab at that. One of the things I do find very intriguing about the space in the area and some of the possibilities that we have, I'm sure many of you know Galen Nelson with the BRA. They're involved with a project called the Galvin Initiative. And they're trying to do some of these things with clean technologies. So exploring, you know, what can be done with district heating, what kinds of things can be done with large-scale implementation of renewables. How could we do things like, they call it islanding, where you actually take and say, we're going to be able to disconnect from the electrical grid, and we'd be able to actually generate our own power from within our own neighborhood. So I think, you know, the character of the neighborhood, the building stock that we have here, so many of the things, the forward-thinking policy, you know, that the city has, so many opportunities we have to experiment down here and to try some of these things. And I think it's a great opportunity. There are so many good, you know, both public sector and private sector programs and opportunities for funding that it's just got so much great potential for doing things relating to my field, which are, you know, renewables, clean tech, and then I think there's so much crossover, you know, especially with the food industry, with, you know, different types of sustainable processes. And Barbara and I were just talking about rooftop beekeeping. It just so happens that there's a young woman who is a member of one of our companies who actually asked me just the other day, she's like, do you think the building management would be okay if we did rooftop Bs? And we just got in and we just negotiated a lease, and I'm like, I'm going to wait maybe just a month or two before we try to go pass that off. But I think it's a great idea, and there's so many of these things that we'd like to try, and I think this is the right place and the right time to do it.
Yeah, I was fascinated about the fact that there's an apiary at the Intercontinental Hotel. I don't know if you've heard that. I read an article just about that recently. I thought that was quite amazing. Barbara, would you like to just follow up on that food, that idea of food, and how what that means to you as an urban lab here?
My feeling on that is I'm so excited. You have no idea. I kind of am a geek. Like, I love creating things like with food and equipment and so forth. So I'm very excited to actually meet Jason and talk more about what's coming up next for me in general. But food labs, there's so much going on, which I'm so excited about right now. I have been spending a lot of time at Harvard and at Google and at MIT, and I plan on spending some time looking at what he's got going on and seeing more what is going on down here. I am in a restaurant pretty much 7 days a week, so I don't know everything that's going on, but I do feel the really cool flux of innovation around where we are, and really, really proud of it. Like, really happy. I've always been confused, Nigel, forgive me, but innovation. I've always, that word sometimes it gets to me, and it's like, what is innovation? I'm always for, newness and growing and growth and evolving, and I actually think that that's what our city is. It's evolving into. I always get scared as well. I don't want it to be so technology driven in terms of what Kendall Square was when I worked there 24 years ago at Michaela's. I get a little nervous of that. So innovation sometimes has a lot of meanings for me, which is way too many. I could talk forever and I don't want to. So I'm excited about it. I love it. I'm part of it, and I also feel like food is changing right now. Food, the way it's cooked, machinery, what you'll see in the next 10 years is changing. So I'm extremely interested in what we are here and what we have here.
Well, it's exciting to just hear that just in the conversation that you had, that you were already starting to think about, ideas, because I think in one sense innovation is about collaboration. I mean, it's about communication. It's about putting interesting people together. John, you were going to jump
Sure.
in.
So I was in the Bay Area, California recently, and I remember thinking Silicon Valley, there are not that many companies that make silicon in Silicon Valley. Facebook, Google have nothing to do with silicon. And I think the name that this area has is kind of generic, and we should come up with a fun name. It doesn't have to be totally descriptive, but it helps create a consciousness for the area. I look over here, 1922 map of Harvard, and at the time the Charles River was this dirty, smelly, muddy area, and the house system wasn't built. And I think when that finally got built, it changed the orientation of Harvard and its identity with the Charles. I think as this region gets built out, instead of the silhouette of the Hancock and the Prudential being how we see our city from afar, this region can be that. But I'm worried that a lot of kids from neighborhoods of Boston don't feel a connection here. And we've worked with 20,000 middle schoolers in Boston to date. And Sean Robinson, who's a 1L at Northeastern Law School, I encouraged him, a graduate of my program, to come to an event at the Museum of Science where they're celebrating innovation. And he came begrudgingly. He's Jamaican American, didn't see many people like him. He didn't feel comfortable, even though he's now a 2L. And I said, you need to be woven into this economy. You need to see this as as a happening place. And kids like that need to see this area as part of theirs, and this can't be seen as this innovation zone that's kind of like a Vatican City that's separate from the neighborhoods of the city. That's Sean.
Okay, well, I think that actually I want to follow up on that a little bit by asking, I'm sure we've got a panel that has experience in sort of traveling and lecturing in other parts of the country, around the world. One of the aspects about the Innovation District is its aspirations to be kind of a global networking place where people and ideas are transmitted to the world, and the world comes to this place. And I guess I would ask, what other places, neighborhoods, cities, and so forth that you have experienced around the world might offer some lessons or some ideas for how to define this neighborhood going forward? Are there some useful analogies? Cliff?
Well, well, you know, actually, I don't know a lot of examples that I've been to, but the south of Market in San Francisco reminds me a little bit of this, what we have here, in that it started, you know, I guess the difference is that a lot of that existed already and was moving into it and renovating things, not as much of a open slate as there is in part of this neighborhood. And but I do like how in parts of San Francisco that there's a lot of contrast of existing traditional historic architecture with really innovative new architecture. And I think that's what I'm excited about, the possibility of that down here. And actually what was said earlier about really being innovative with public space is, I think it would be a real shame if that doesn't happen down here, that there's some real thought that goes into that.
Oh no, that's some other thoughts about places like Soma is, I think, definitely a good analogy.
I would have to say, with Cliff, San Francisco, the ferry building is amazing. I don't know if you've been there or not, but I go a lot, and it's just absolutely fascinating. I'm friends with half the chefs there, and Charles Spann, and Slanted Door, and Tracy Desjardins, and Chris Constantino, and they have like salami shops, and it's amazing because all your shopping can be done there. And if you live in Mill Valley, you just hop right on the ferry and you go and you're home and you have groceries, or you're in Sausalito.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. I love the dog patch area, which is just starting to happen down there, which was a huge industrial area as well, where there were bakeries and chocolate factories and photography studios and so forth. And what they're actually doing down at Dog Patch is absolutely fascinating in terms of, you know, like clothing store with a market, or you know, tying things in together that it's just so new and fascinating, and it's really happening. Like a larder with a clothing store like Louis, but it's called Mac. And Mac's been around in San Francisco and just took a huge risk and a huge leap and moved down there, and he couldn't be happier, you know. So Hayes Valley is another area that like I admire immensely, because it's still growing after 20 years. It hasn't been that like trend in one word, one term. People are still growing there. So to me, I admire that a lot, and I really hope that we have a lot of that coming here with what we have started.
John?
So some things I've noticed, I think other countries are taking this very seriously. In China, when I was visiting there, I noticed they had all these models of what their cities were going to be like in 20 years, and they have one-party system, and it's easier to kind of build the infrastructure. They have, I think, 82 high-speed rails. We have none. But I think a lot of other countries are taking this very seriously, and they're building infrastructure. Some of my friends that I got to know through the Loeb Fellowship, who are helping to build cities in India, say there's cell coverage everywhere. And I go from my house to here, and there's so many places I don't get cell coverage, and I think that infrastructure is important. And I think for the identity of our region, a lot of people identify with the Stanley Cup. We just won. I think people got the memo on that. We've been champs in some of the health science and life science for 30 years. But a lot of people don't see us as a leader like that and see this region as instrumental into that. So I think other places around the world, and there are places other than California that are just taking this really seriously. And I think we need to help orient everyone in the metro region to see why this is important to us. And I don't think we've done that as well as we could.
You know, one of the things that occurs to me is that a lot of innovation districts around the world have been looked at by the city of Boston and by some of the developers down here. Cities like Barcelona and some of the new innovation districts that have been created in Asia. We have a sort of an interesting and somewhat unique physical condition here, which is which we saw the slide earlier about all the train tracks, which were sort of the connection to the world that came out to Fan Pier, which was called Fan Pier because of the fan of the train tracks. And some people think that the old Fort Point district is like what remains of like there was mass demolition, like in the West End or something, when in fact that's not the case. The neighborhood is largely a preserved enclave of buildings that was surrounded by train tracks. And so now we're going to have really a new city being built adjacent to the old district. Where many of you are, where all of you, frankly, are currently located, and I think that presents, an interesting dynamic, an interesting physical challenge. And I guess I would like to ask the panel what they hope for out of the new construction and the new district and so forth that would make this place really special and that would complement what we already know and love about the neighborhood, and what they hope doesn't happen.
I mean, I have a couple thoughts. Certainly, one of the things I would love to see, we do have this, Scott Kirchner of Boston.com. You guys, many of you are on Twitter, you might have seen some of his updates about some complaints he had to register about the innovation district, and why does innovation have so many parking lots? And I think this is a challenge for us. We have a lot of space here, and there's a lot of space that needs to be filled and occupied. And if we're going to do this properly, it needs to be. I am a proponent of clean technology and these types of things, but it needs to be a mix. It really does need to be a diverse array of residents and commercial businesses and people of different economic backgrounds, and I think we need to do a better job of integrating and bringing in another generation of artists. I think we have to have that within this community if it's going to be vibrant. It can't be just another windswept portion that's part of the financial district. It does need to be stitched together, and we need to find ways to make it inclusive for all kinds of folks.
Yeah, I actually agree with what you said, and my concern would be that we don't lose the scale of things down here. It'd be, when you look at these large parking lots, it'd be easy to think of large buildings moving in with large spaces. And one of the things that's made this unique is that there are tall buildings here, but they're compartmentalized into very kind of affordable spaces, which has, I think, led to not just the creative artists and creative industries, but just startups in general to move down here. And I think we can't lose that. We have to retain the mix of the economy of the neighborhood. I also think it's an interesting opportunity because I've been, as a design student, I've been involved in a lot of projects that have had to kind of figure out what is Boston's brand and what do we look like, and it's what it's always come back to for me is this kind of blend of the old and the new, and we have this old, really pretty interesting looking neighborhood, and I don't think you can just go and mimic that, but you have to do something that is contrasts with it and is compatible with it and kind of accentuates it. And so I think that that's going to make it interesting in terms of what this is as an opportunity.
Thanks for talking about the rail line. I think of Melcher Street, why it bends. That's because it's an old
My
rail.
favorite street in Boston.
Yeah. So one thing that didn't make it into the bio, in addition to what I did in college, was I'm the executive curator, one of a few that got a license to run TEDx Boston, and we're having our second event in this area on Tuesday, and we had tons of interest of folks coming. We're going to have 650 folks there, steel cases, donate a ton of furniture, and it's a nice way to bring a lot of people in the area that haven't been in this area. And we decided that there wasn't enough space, so we're going to do a simulcast at Google with another 250 people in Cambridge. And thank you for helping with that. But I would love for the people we bring, and we're going to have a few thousand also watching online. We have a web live kind of virtual space to see it, to really feel a connection to this area. And as we think about year 4, a year from now, that we say we can't possibly do this anywhere else because we are our capacity, we want to grow. And right now I feel like people come to the area, but they don't really feel a connection. I just flew in from DC right before this panel and asked 3 people, where's 2 Seaport Lane? And no one knew where it was. I knew it was one of these 3 buildings. But this can't be an anonymous kind of parking lot, graveyard place. This needs to be a place with character that people really feel a connection to. So all the people that I bring in for this annual event that aren't from here should feel like connected and want to come back. And I don't think we've necessarily achieved that, and maybe this is an early stage of developing this community, but I think there are some things that can be done to help with that.
I'm actually with you on the parking. I don't know.
That's great.
Tickets towed. I know, personally, I know Joey, and I get my car towed at least twice a week, once a week. It's crazy. I mean, try to run around Boston with 8 restaurants and park. And,
Bike.
I wish. I'm very, you don't have no idea.
Scooter.
I'm lucky I'm very accident prone as well, so you gotta keep on going here. But parking's always in it. I mean, we do. We have so much space. Why can't we have one lot for public parking that is maybe $4 instead of $12 or $24, huh?
Or meters.
Or meters. Meters are key, bike lots, public lots. Hopefully someday we have lots where all our cars are charging. And our trucks are charging, that our cleanup trucks. Why can't we have a recycling center down here somewhere? A compost center where we can recycle and put compost and so forth, and teach our kids who are in the neighborhoods how to recycle and how to use stuff. Restaurants, my God, my main concern, which I think I've talked to the mayor a few times recently. I have a hard time with commercial restaurants, steak joints, Del Frisco's.
National chains.
National chains. My concern is, as an independent restaurateur, what we believe in, culture and quality and value and our check average. I can't compete against a $22 check average because you have 400 square feet and your food comes off a Cisco truck. So that is scary to me about how much has happened down here without soul, without love and care and about the neighborhood. I mean, I think I do a lot in the South End and a lot for down here, but why does not Legal Seafood have a CSA package for our local neighborhood in terms of a fish program? And he owns half of it down there. I mean, there's just all those concerns about, I wish they thought about it as much as I get asked to do it, which I love. But there is a lot more down here that doesn't really participate in what we do, but yet we support and we go and we have thousands of visitors or conventions. And it almost seems like we do have to work together. And I'm with you on terms of young kids knowing what is going on down here. It's very important.
Future Barbara Lynch's.
I'm in the middle of a Blackstone project, this poorest school in the city on Chalmette, and we just built the first Woolly wall. And Woolly Project was so excited that they gave us another one for free. I can't tell you how fun it was to have 80 kids meet the worms yesterday and talk about worms and grow vegetables and eat mint and go, oh my God, it tastes like bubble gum. I want that. I want that down here. I want a school down here. Why we should have a school here that does develop innovation and education. We should think about that. And I could go on, but I shouldn't.
No, those
I
are.
have one beer and one microphone.
Those are great comments. I just want to ask maybe one more question before we start to open it up to the audience for more questions, and that is, this neighborhood has sort of had a history of what I would call dynamic tension, right? There was industry, and then there was a sort of a little bit of a competition between, as industry started to fade, artists and other groups came in and made something of nothing, and then through happenstance and adjacency to the financial district and all kinds of other things, the neighborhood started to evolve, and there was a sort of a interesting dynamic tension between the artist community, which is still such an important part of the community, a Fort Point community, and the new companies coming in, and now this other issue of balancing the development of something that's really authentic and local with the kind of national development and retailers that are in some sense necessary to develop some of the larger parcels here. So there's this kind of history of competition down here. I'm wondering, in the sort of optimistic scenario, knowing that there are these sort of different kinds of entities and different kinds of groups, how you all see a community evolving down here that could potentially create the sort of situation where Legals is participating in some kind of a local food program, or where we get national retailers and developers to think differently about being in Boston, to have companies like Vertex, which are very, very different than the company than like Green Labs, to actually not just be headquarters here, but actually be a part of something special in the community here. What's your vision for what this neighborhood could be, let's say 5-10 years from now?
Talk for a while, Jason.
Do you want to do
Two microphones? No, that's okay. I don't know. I think the whole nature of this is very cyclical, right? I mean, after there was this huge economic downturn, there was the opportunity for the artists to move into these fantastic spaces. And, over time, there have been various fits and starts throughout, even the time that I've been here, the very short period where, it was trying to be built up, and then there was a convention center, and then, hey, guess what, 2005 came along, and these are going to be residential condominiums everywhere, and we know where that went. So, I think it's, there's ebbs and flows, and it's cyclical, but, I already feel the pressure being down here. We did a fairly short-term lease in terms of a commercial deal because we're small startup companies, and we have no guarantee that we're going to be here, 2-3 years down the road. But I knew Vertex was coming down the pipe, and I said, we better get this deal done on our lease because, once this starts to commercialize, there is a concern that, we may have slightly more resources than, an individual artist to do something, but we can't compete, and that's why we got priced out of Kendall Square. We couldn't afford $100 per square foot life sciences laboratories. So we came here, and the building stock is perfect. The price was right. The city was fantastic. But, we don't know what that's going to be. So I think we need to proceed cautiously with what we're doing. And, I think we're all being very thoughtful about it. But I think it still remains to be seen. What is it going to be 10 years from now?
It makes me think that one of the things that really could be so interesting about this district to help preserve some of the things that are so important about it is just being self-aware, having this kind of conversation continuously, as a community. Cliff, you've been involved in the community, the Fort Point community. What do you think?
Well, personally, I'm advocating the continued role of the artist. Contribution down here. I mean, actually, I have to say I've enjoyed a lot of the things that have changed down here as well. Like, the artists neighborhood was great back in the early 80s and mid 80s. But it is nice to have flour down here instead of half a bite. So there's some good things happening. And the ICA is fantastic to have in our neighborhood now. So there's all kinds of things. So, thinking optimistically, I would just like to embrace both. If I'm looking at it, I'm thinking like art and technology or cyber arts, or that's maybe that can be our slant on making the two linked up, and not to say that everything has to be cyber arts, but the fact that there are these two angles coming to it, maybe that can be a big part of it too.
So I think ensuring there are opportunities to bump and connect to people and exchange ideas. I also think we have an embarrassment of riches with all that's going for this region, and just make sure that there's a critical mass to take advantage of it. I think in Maine, there are a lot of, a decade ago, there was a lot of money put to create these little innovation districts, and now it's just grass growing up because it was spread out too much across the state, and there isn't a critical mass. I also think the connection to the water, it's not just the harbor here, but the 4-Point Channel. A lot of people don't even know, you can walk and look at the post office, and I think if the post office ever moves, that'll, be a real game changer for the region. And I think building off of the artists, I think just making sure there's a fun place to be, the ICA, the food, the range of people here, and just make sure there are a lot of smiles. This isn't a serious place. Kendall Square at night, it's like a ghost town for a lot of years, and this doesn't have to be like this, and this can be like a destination place that we're really proud of.
I think the post office they're stopping Saturday service. I think Monday through Friday is maybe shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
So there's some hope there. Barbara, before we go to the group, do you have some thoughts about that?
Pretty much everything that they're saying. Live, work, play. There's a lot of work down here. There's not a lot of living down here. And yeah, I'm totally nervous about the life at night, and how many of you live here and how many of you work here but don't live here. And affordable living would be great for urban families. If you want to have a family, if you want to have 2 kids, you want to have a dog, you want to have all of that, we should seriously be thinking of that in terms of urban modern affordable living if you want to continue to have youth come in and innovate, basically. That's my feeling.
I know I'm sure there are a lot of questions. I want to open it up to the audience. I was going to say, I know that there's some new developments coming. Of course, Vertex broke ground yesterday, the largest private development project in the United States right today, apparently, which is an incredible coup for the city and the state. Similarly, I know that Q Block, which is one of the first parcels to get built in Seaport Square, which is a park that's within the district, is going to break ground shortly. It will have a dog park and other things which will start to create a place for residents to call their own. Let me open this up to the audience. We started 15 minutes late, but I'd like to take the next 10-15 minutes to have some questions from the audience, if I could. Anyone? Oh, come on. Please, stand up and or we can hear. I'll do the Oprah Winfrey thing.
Hi. First of all, thanks for coming. And second of all, I'd like to hear more about how you plan to take advantage of having the Atlantic Ocean right at your doorstep. What can you do here in this innovation district that you wouldn't do if it was inland?
Go swimming?
Yeah.
More often? Okay.
Harbor's clean.
Yeah.
I would just say eat outside next to the water is a great thing to do. We're not going to be out there with our laptops probably working on our projects, but to take advantage of what is around here is really exciting. I actually think that is one of the things that will eventually encourage people to actually move here when there's a little bit more of that things happening along there. And even last summer, I was just amazed at how much was going on in that whole Louise and ICA stretch there. It was really exciting to see that, to be able to walk around it summer night and see what's going on.
I take advantage of the city all the time. I actually have a 7-year-old daughter, and we take boat rides all the time to our little islands. And I plan on doing it again this summer. I was, you know, my mother would take me to Salt Station where we'd go to Paragon Park every summer. So Nantasket Beach, roller coaster, back, Salt Station, home. We have a fabulous boat system, and I think it could be more aware when I go to Provincetown and come back. And you can get on the boat to go to the airport is amazing. Like, what other city has that? I go to the Jazz Fest at the Boston Harbor Hotel. I have beer at the ICA in the summer. Are you kidding? This is like, there's so much to do here on the waterfront. It's great to be here.
One of the things that makes me think of is that, you know, we saw the slide Nigel had earlier about the various clusters, the LMA, Kendall Square, Route 128. And, you know, there's been some talk about, you know, how's the innovation district, you know, how does it compete with those places? And it seems to me that, you know, this thing that we're talking about, the identity with the harbor, the connections to the airport, to the potential water system of transportation system, could be one of those things that maybe gives the district the identity that is not just, you know, generic innovation district, but is something that connects to the Boston Harbor, which is in and of itself a legendary, for good and bad, a legendary icon in the country. John?
I think there are a lot of hip creative types here. Come up with a fun festival that like everyone wants to get into in the area. As folks that are tenants in the area, maybe encourage staff meetings to be outside, one-on-one reviews. You go walk, in front of the ICA, and then I think there's a lot of rich history in the Harbor Islands, and maybe find some folks that could go to every company in the area and give a session on it, and really build a sense of pride on the history of the waterfront. And I have a 2-hour lecture I give, so if anyone wants that, I can go into that. And then if anyone wants to swim in the Boston Light Swim, I'll get you in for free.
Some more questions, please? Here. I'm sorry, pardon my reach.
Hi. This is more of a comment. I don't think innovation district is the right term for this area. Am I right? Because so earlier there was they're trying to connect Kendall Square, Technology Square, and the medical center, and this, what you've told me, is totally different. It's not the same place. I work over in Cambridge, very focused, very science, very, very disciplined science. You don't have that here. You have more entrepreneurship. So maybe that's a better word. And you also have, even though it's not exactly yet, but as the businesses come in, you do have the possibility of having definitely a mixed use environment where you do have housing and whatnot, which is very different than Technology Square and the medical district. So that's my take. I think it's the wrong brand. I don't think you should even try to connect yourselves with Tech Square, and just come up with your own silver lining and go from there.
Thank you.
I guess I would ask, I mean, what do we call it? I think, this district and these regions have had so many names throughout, even the years that I've been here. And going far back historically, I mean, right, Fort Point used to be the wool district.
Yeah.
I mean, what do we name it? We need to do something here. And I think, unless someone has a better suggestion, Innovation District is the best I've heard so far. But how do we tie together Fort Point as a community, this gap, which is, the convention center and some of the things that are emerging, and, how do we pull in the dry docks? I think that is a very important, the last question about how do we tie this into the water? How do we bring all these things together? Because, all of them, being part of South Boston, are still not like the rest of South Boston. So we need something here that's a little bit more cohesive. So I would challenge that a little bit. That I think we have a very diverse mix, but Innovation District is the best I've heard. So unless somebody has better ideas, I stick with that.
I think there are a lot worse things that we could call it that I can think of. So the word innovation doesn't really bother me because it can apply to so many things. But I actually I still refer to it as a Fort Point arts community or neighborhood. And what if it was just an innovation community instead of district? It adds a little bit of a human element to it.
I have another question here.
I just wanted to ask, one way to cement the innovation concept idea is to bring links in with universities in the Boston area. So what if any, is there any effort to reach out to those universities and have them develop satellite campuses that basically leverage what is special about Cambridge and Boston?
Well, I do know that that Babson has just announced that they're opening up a division of their campus here in the Innovation District. I think it's a very interesting move for them because, of course, they're out in the suburbs and they want to feel connected to what's happening in the city. It might prove to be an interesting model, but I would actually sort of change the question slightly to say that a lot of innovation districts have university sponsors. And this district is sort of evolving in a slightly different way as a kind of a more entrepreneurial project. Some thoughts about that?
I know I'm excited that Babson's jumping in, and I've heard Keith Motley from UMass, Columbia Point, saying that he wants the UMass system to be connected here. I think there are 88 colleges and universities in the Boston area, so a lot. And one thing I'd love to see is some of the middle schoolers to work with college students coming into the area, working with some of the cool entrepreneurs and leaders, and do these volunteer 10-week apprenticeship type projects as a way to bring people together. Not everyone can build a building or rent 14,000 square feet, but just bring people through here. And I think when people see, wow, look at this area, look at all that stuff that's going on, enjoy the box lunches at Sportella's, a lot of good things will happen.
How about some last questions? Linda.
Hi, I'm Linda Lucas, and I've lived here almost 15 years. And I want to pick up on Barbara's point about live, work, play. And there are about, I think it's fair to say, and someone correct me, there are about 2,000 residents, some taxpayers. And it's one thing, to live here and work here or just live here. But the weekends is kind of quiet, except for the tourists. We also, for those of us who have lived here for a while and own property, we have the challenge of knitting together, because it's really a neighborhood of neighborhoods. So we all want to be connected. I don't know if Jim Sousa's still here, but we were just talking, there he is over there. Channel Center, I'm Sleeper Street, there's Summer Street, there's Congress Street, Melcher Street, there's just a series of neighborhoods. And it's brutal on Sunday morning after the, not drink and not menton, but along Sleeper Street we'll find, cars have been broken into, people doing bizarre things on our property.
Innovative.
So there are folks that don't even know. They don't even know. I'll say I live in the Innovation District, or formerly the 4-Point Channel, and 9 times out of 10 it's where's that? So it's one thing to talk about, we all want folks to come into the neighborhood, we all want folks to enjoy it, but we have to attract more folks to live so that it really becomes a vibrant neighborhood. It's not just a tourist destination. So to me, that's a huge, I'm on the Impact Advisory Group for the Archon project on A Street. And I say all the time, it is so critical to get more folks to move into this neighborhood, because that's putting a stake in the ground, and we want to all work together, the neighborhoods within the neighborhood, to protect this area and to be advocates and to get involved. So I think that's a huge, huge initiative here that I haven't heard, and I would love for you to comment, if at all. I don't know how many live here. How many of you live here? Okay, Barb, yay. Okay, so the living part, it's not an easy place to live. It's really not.
Some thoughts about making a sort of the live, work, play idea a little bit?
I guess I have a comment. I've lived in both worlds, right? I lived here in 2000, 2001. I lived on D Street, right across from where the convention center was being built. So I can fully appreciate that it's not an easy place to live at times. I think certainly it's gotten better with so many more services, but coming into a different stage of my life now, being married and thinking about a family, be very difficult to do here, especially as an entrepreneur, to try and locate here and do those things. So I really appreciate the efforts that are being made by Archon, who's also our building management. I think that's fantastic, but the types of innovation housing don't work necessarily. They're smaller spaces, which are great for some of our entrepreneurs and some of our very young folks. But it's a real challenge, and I almost would like to ask a question back, which is, what happened in 2005 through 2008? I mean, that was the residential push. Why didn't we get more of that here? Was it just too late to the game to actually bring more people into this as a live area?
Well, that's a topic for a whole other forum, I can tell you for sure.
We're locking the door. We're doing it overnight.
Yeah, we'll lock the door. I think we have a couple more questions. Okay, let's try and make them quick. I don't want to keep people here all night.
Hi, I'm Michael Terrell. My wife and I lived over at Midway Studios over on Channel Center Street. I served as president of the 4 Point Neighborhood Association from 2008 up to 2011, and we had some open houses, one of which was at Barbara Lynch's restaurant. It was a wonderful event. We thank you for supporting that. I think I'll just keep it simple. For me, my observations, having served for those 2 years, is that the artist community and what I call the condominium community, it is absolutely imperative, and I'm not saying this isn't happening, because it is, but it has to get more, we have to, I think, pick up the pace. Those two communities really need to merge and work together to build the citizen clout of this community. Because I think the community side, the things that Linda Lucas was touching upon a moment ago, in order for us to be more effective, to build that accommodation in this area, to make it more comfortable at night, I think that the artists who blazed the trail and created the comfort zone, and the new investors, the people who are following that lead, they need to work together. Again, I'm kind of oversimplifying it, but they need to build the clout so that they can be assured that folks like Nigel will, that they're going to attract clear attention and be able to work together effectively to create things like a tot lot and a dog run and an expanded open space. And that's something that has lagged for the longest time. Now, I just recently heard that Parcel D is going to feature these amenities, but the community has been invited, I think, to a meeting, and that's great. It's good that all that's happening. It's fine. But for us to be an innovation district, I think there's a need for the community to get to know about those opportunities beforehand, so there's a sense of ownership from the get-go. I actually don't know enough about the Parcel D proposal, but everyone's kind of learning about it after the fact, and the community has clearly made it known that it wants to work with City Hall to make open space options happen. We've said repeatedly in some of our development meetings that there's been a baby boom in the neighborhood, there's a need for a tot lot, a playground, and so it just, sometimes it feels like there's a disconnect, and I think that just that very basic way of interacting and working together to see things happen and to create a sense of ownership, that the people who live here have a stake in the creation of these facilities, rather than, oh, I'm a big developer, and we have the resources, and we're coming up, and we heard you need this. I mean, I don't want to imply the wrong thing, because I think we're all eager to sit down and learn about that proposal. But it isn't coming from the neighborhood, it's coming from a developer. So it is a positive, but I just, again, want to get this notion across that people who live here want to know as soon as the idea comes up and would like to feel like they have some ownership or part of, are connected to its development and implementation. I hope that was helpful. Thank you.
Michael, thank you. I think I should actually try and wrap this up. Maybe one more question. One thing I want to say, that I'm hearing in that comment is that one of the things that's critical to the evolution of the Innovation District is that it becomes a neighborhood like all of Boston's neighborhoods that has a really clear identity and a sense of cohesiveness as it changes. That was certainly my experience in the South End. That, you know, when the new folks start coming, they're going to start coming fast, and it's going to be really critical for the neighborhood to sort of gather, have it be one place. But anyway, this is a last question, so make it a good one.
That's a lot of pressure. I hear a lot being said about families and having a community down here, but I'm a young guy and I'm looking for apartments, and it's expensive for me. I work for a startup company down here, and I get paid a mere pittance because it's a startup company. And where I need to live is way out in Somerville or JP or the inexpensive house. Why an underground bus?
Well, you know, that issue of, maybe we can sort of close on this question, which is that issue of connectivity, and what that can, how does someone like you feel connected? You know, one of the things that was done, a study was done of innovative companies, and one of the questions that was asked is, what is the thing that is going to attract you to work in this place? And bicycle access was the #1 comment, and which was really interesting, a real generational shift. And you know, I know bicycle sharing is about to come to our neighborhood here, which is kind of an exciting thing. I know because we just located one on Northern Avenue just a couple of days ago. But some parting, actually taking all of the comments that you've heard, would folks like to just sort of make some wrap-up comments?
It's a great comment. I mean, it's been a comment for a long time, and welcome to Boston. I don't know what to tell you about that one. The MBTA, the Charlie system, whatever you want to call it. I hope I'm around to see some changes. Bicycle sharing is great. I don't know what you're going to do in February, March.
It works in Montreal?
Yes, I'm sure it does. I'm so with you on every part of that. I mean, if I could build a train station, if I could build a rail up above, I would. If I could invent affordable housing, I would. I wish I could. I swear, I wish I could. I have 250 employees now, and they can't afford to live here, and they have to live with 4 other people. They make, you know, they went to culinary school. They don't make a lot of money. I'm a restaurateur. I don't make money. I have a good lifestyle, but you know, they don't. They make $10 an hour as a line cook, $11 an hour, $10 an hour for a dishwasher. And when I have to stay open late, they have to take a taxi home because the tea's not open. They can't afford a taxi. I pay for the taxis. And how much are the taxis these days? To get 5 minutes from here to the airport is $28?
Ridiculous.
Sometimes. I can't. I have to call my friends like Norton, Boxers, come pick me up. I can't. I won't. I just have that anger at me. I can't imagine paying this much money to get from here to there in 5 minutes. So, welcome to Boston.
Especially when you can practically throw a rock.
Throw the rock, take that ferry over. I don't know. You know, we have a lot to work on. Tremendous amount to work on here.
University students as well.
Yep.
You know, it's a dilemma, though. All of the cities that are the so-called innovative center models, San Francisco, New York, London, Boston, this is a problem for all of these places because they're all very expensive cities. And so it's an interesting dilemma that,
How do you stop that?
you know, that critical mass and then the affordability problem. They sort of kind of go hand in hand.
I think sometimes you have to cap the development, the prices. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, an independent restaurant can't pay $60 a square foot per restaurant. You just can't. I don't know who could.
John?
So on the biking, I recommend getting a 1-gear bike that you can, low maintenance, and you can bike through the winter. I think Nicole Friedman's doing a great job, as our bikes are. the housing issue is painful. I mean, I have tons of 20-somethings on my staff, and we're in 22 cities: New Mexico, North Carolina, Texas, New Jersey, and some of my most talented folks, after they do a cycle here, are going there. And I don't know. There's not an easy answer to that. I had a family of 3, and we're really lucky how we got set up. But I don't see the next generation having those breaks, and so this has to be figured out, or we're going to be in real trouble. I think there are a confluence of factors to make this region so exciting. And we have a lot of political leaders that have a ton of political capital. And I think we need leadership of the folks here to come up with creative ideas to make this, just cutting edge viable. And I hope we don't screw this up. And I think we're going in the right direction. But there's a lot of opportunity for leadership. And I hope that comes out of the next decade. And we've missed some cycles here. And, we've missed some opportunities. The economy tanked. But I see really good things for the future of this region, because of all of you.
Well, I agree about the access here. I like being downtown. I like being in this area. I have rely on a lot of talented young designers who work in my studio that can take the T as far as either Broadway or South Station. But they still have to walk across that bridge in the wintertime, which isn't very easy. And where I am now is kind of halfway between those two, so it's about a half-a-mile walk either station. But the best idea I've heard is a monorail. So for the running from Broadway over to the ICA and back or something, and over to the South Station. So one other thing is that cars. There will be more cars coming in here, and I think that was one of the things that turned this neighborhood around, was the entry and exit ramp in right here in the heart of South Boston. I think before, when the big dig was going on, that really held things up, that you had to go cut through all the construction to get down into this neighborhood. So that's made a big difference. But I think that once this development starts, even that's going to be pretty difficult. Like if they can increase the green light time coming off of the Mass Pike onto Congress Street, that would be huge.
Jason, last word?
Sure, a couple last things. So maybe I skipped over that a little bit. Are you familiar with this, we talk about urban labs and kind of the experiment. Are you familiar with this thing that's happening at Melcher Street about innovation housing?
Vaguely.
Okay,
not pricing or...
Okay, yeah, I mean, pricing, remains to be seen, I guess, once the construction gets done and when it gets done. But, we've been told, and I've heard, correct me if I'm wrong, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of around $1,200 that they're looking to try and price these units. They are very small, but, as a single entrepreneur, I have friends, years ago who, they wanted to be in the Back Bay, and they took a 250 square foot place. So yeah, I mean, you actually can live in 300 square feet and 400 square feet. So I think
that's still pretty expensive. I paid like 600 now. And
yeah, I mean, there are places in East Cambridge and yes, other parts of.
Listen, so I mean, now we're getting, into the nitty gritty, and I'd like to try and find some, but I think we're ending on a really interesting note, which is about, transportation connections and affordable housing, and some of the issues that are so critical to keeping, frankly, the young entrepreneur and the young folks who are attracted to Boston for many reasons here in this area. But those all also have to follow opportunity. And so I want to thank all of the panelists for actually creating those opportunities here in the district, and for participating in this, and for doing what is so necessary, which is getting together to really create a new kind of community here. Let's give them a hand. Thank you, everyone, for giving your evening to participate in this forum, and have a good night.
Thanks.
Why an underground bus?
Well, that issue of, maybe we can sort of close on this question, which is that issue of connectivity, and what that can, how does someone like you feel connected? One of the things that was done a study was done of innovative companies, and one of the questions that was asked is, what is the thing that is going to attract you to work in this place? And bicycle access was the #1 comment, and which was really interesting, a real generational shift. And I know bicycle sharing is about to come to our neighborhood here, which is kind of an exciting thing. I know because we just located one on Northern Avenue just a couple of days ago. But some parting, actually taking all of the comments that you've heard, would folks like to just sort of make some wrap-up comments?
It's a great comment. I mean, it's been a comment for a long time, and welcome to Boston. I don't know what to tell you about that one. The MBTA, the Charlie system, whatever you want to call it, I hope I'm around to see some changes. Bicycle sharing is great. I don't know what you're going to do in February, March.
It works in Montreal?
Yeah, I'm sure it does. I'm so with you on every part of that. I mean, if I could build a train station, if I could build a rail up above, I would. If I could invent affordable housing, I would. I wish I could. I swear, I wish I could. I have 250 employees now, and they can't afford to live here, and they have to live with 4 other people. They make, they went to culinary school. They don't make a lot of money. I'm a restaurateur. I don't make money. I have a good lifestyle, but they don't. They make $10 an hour to work. $11 an hour, $10 an hour for a dishwasher. And when I have to stay open late, they have to take a taxi home because the tea's not open. They can't afford a taxi. I pay for the taxis. And how much are the taxis these days? To get 5 minutes from here to the airport is $28?
Ridiculous.
Sometimes. I can't. I have to call my friends like Norton, Boxers, come pick me up. I can't. I won't. I just have that anger at me. I can't imagine paying this much money to get from here to there in 5 minutes. So, welcome to Boston.
Especially when you can practically throw a rock.
Throw the rock, take that ferry over. I don't know. We have a lot to work on. Tremendous amount to work on here.
University students as well.
Yep.
It's a dilemma, though. All of the cities that are the so-called innovative center models, San Francisco, New York, London, Boston, this is a problem for all of these places because they're all very expensive cities, and so it's an interesting dilemma that
How do you stop that?
That critical mass and then the affordability problem. They sort of kind of go hand in hand.
I think sometimes you have to cap the development, the prices. I mean, an independent restaurant can't pay $60 a square foot per restaurant. You just can't. I don't know who could.
John?
So on the biking, I recommend getting a 1-gear bike that you can, low maintenance, and you can bike through the winter. I think Nicole Friedman's doing a great job, as our bikes are. The housing issue is painful. I mean, I have tons of 20-somethings on my staff, and we're in 22 cities: New Mexico, North Carolina, Texas, New Jersey, and some of my most talented folks, after they do a cycle here, are going there. And I don't know. There's not an easy answer to that. I have a family of 3, and we're really lucky how we got set up. But I don't see the next generation having those breaks, and so this has to be figured out, or we're going to be in real trouble. I think there are a confluence of factors to make this region so exciting. And we have a lot of political leaders that have a ton of political capital. And I think we need leadership of the folks here to come up with creative ideas to make this, just cutting edge viable. And I hope we don't screw this up. And I think we're going in the right direction. But there's a lot of opportunity for leadership. And I hope that comes out of the next decade. And we've missed some cycles here, and we've missed some opportunities. The economy tanked. But I think I see really good things for the future of this region because of all of you.
Well, I agree about the access here. I like being downtown. I like being in this area. I have rely on a lot of talented young designers who work in my studio that can take the T as far as either Broadway or South Station, but they still have to walk across that bridge in the wintertime, which isn't very easy, and where I am now is kind of halfway between those two, so it's about a half a mile walk either station. But the best idea I've heard is a monorail. So for the running from Broadway over to the ICA and back or something, and over to the South Station. So one other thing is that cars, there will be more cars coming in here, and I think that was one of the things that turned this neighborhood around was the entry and exit ramp in right here in the heart of South Boston. I think before when the big dig was going on. That really held things up, that you had to go cut through all the construction to get down into this neighborhood. So that's made a big difference, but I think that once this development starts, even that's going to be pretty difficult. Like if they can increase the green light time coming off of the Mass Pike onto Congress Street, that would be huge.
Jason, last word?
Sure, a couple last things. So maybe I skipped over that a little bit. Are you familiar with this, we talk about urban labs and kind of the experiment. Are you familiar with this thing that's happening at Melcher Street about innovation housing?
Vaguely.
Okay,
not pricing or...
Okay, yeah, I mean, pricing, remains to be seen, I guess, once the construction gets done and when it gets done. But, we've been told, and I've heard, correct me if I'm wrong, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of around $1,200 that they're looking to try and price these units. They are very small, but as a single entrepreneur, I have friends, years ago who, they wanted to be in the Back Bay and they took a 250 square foot place. So yeah, I mean, you actually can live in 300 square feet and 400 square feet. So I think
that's still pretty expensive. I paid like 600 now. And
yeah, I mean, there are places in East Cambridge and yes, other parts of.
Listen, so I mean, now we're getting, into the nitty gritty, and I'd like to try and find some, but I think we're ending on a really interesting note, which is about, transportation connections and affordable housing and some of the issues that are so critical to keeping, frankly, the young entrepreneur and the young folks who are attracted to Boston for many reasons here in this area. But those all also have to follow opportunity. And so, so I want to thank all of the panelists for actually creating those opportunities here in the district, and for participating in this, and for doing what is so necessary, which is getting together to really create a new kind of community here. Let's give them a hand. Thank you, everyone, for giving your evening to participate in this forum, and have a good night.
Thanks.